With a domestic population of 350 million and 7.8 billion worldwide, we thank the 12 of you that listen to this garbage.
It's garbage, and I'll tell you why.
The Patriotically Correct Radio Show.
Eat me.
With Stu and Rich. Worldwide at thepcradioshow.com.
I had a guy that was calling me, and he was asking me about advertising on the Patriotically Correct Radio Show. I mean, I guess I can't blame him. So many people have told us that they've recently become addicted to this program because we're relentless seekers of truth and facts, which is something that you will not get from the mainstream media. It's something that you cannot get on social media because, you know, if you post any truth at all on social media, specifically Twitter or Facebook, your facts will get checked and your facts will not matter. But in talking about this, he was like, well, what's the price? And I was telling him the price, and he was like, well, you're going to have a lot more than 12 listeners. And I think it's because he heard this.
With a domestic population of 350 million and 7.8 billion worldwide, we thank the 12 of you that listen to this garbage.
It's garbage, and I'll tell you why.
The Patriotically Correct Radio Show.
You've heard of sarcasm, right? I mean, it's called sarcasm. There are close to 1 million people that listen to us every afternoon on iHeartRadio. Welcome into the program, Patriotically Correct Radio. Mojo 50 Radio is the station on iHeartRadio. Download the OpsLens app, where we are also broadcasting live, as well as on Twitter for as long as they allow us to continue that, and on the Facebooks. So, and then anywhere. I mean, if you have Podbean or Spreaker or Apple Podcasts or iTunes, Spotify, all these different places, you just search the Patriotically Correct Radio Show. You'll see a wonderful picture of two ruggedly handsome, good-looking young men. And that will be that guy right there, Richard Leonard, and myself. Welcome to the program. Richard, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm well. I'm a little bit perturbed by some information that was emailed to me. My source is going to remain anonymous. And that is because we have to protect his anonymity because he works with the federal government, and he works for one of those three-letter agencies that's intelligence gathering / law enforcement. And I've gone further as to just say he because I promised to protect his anonymity. I probably should have said they, he, her. I really don't know how he or she identifies, and it would be weird and very bigoted and racist, misogynist of me to try to speculate as to how another person identifies. And due to the extreme volatility of current events, almost no one dares to make a prediction these days. But he sent me a timeline based on interviews with top law enforcement who have ties to federal agencies, including himself, with additional sources from the militia community, as well as individuals close to the Trump administration. And this timeline obviously is subject to change, but there is a narrative about Election Day, the insurrection of terrorism taking place here that's like domestically grown. We're not talking about Al-Qaeda or ISIS or anything like that. We're talking about Antifa, which I guess would be ISIS for pussies. And we're talking about what it is that they're going to do. And his predictions are that leading up to the election, and there's obviously added drama with the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed, and there's a Supreme Court Justice of the United States seat that sits vacant right now. The left, like Chuck Schumer, is coming out and saying it would be irresponsible of President Trump to do anything prior to the election of the president, because he's saying that it should be up to the people to decide. My argument to that is the people did decide. They voted a majority Republican Senate, and they voted for Donald Trump. They decided that those were the people that they would want to be responsible for appointing any vacancy in the Supreme Court of the United States. It is the job of the president, I think, Richard, last time I checked, it's the job of the president to nominate and the Senate to confirm any nomination put forth by the president for the Supreme Court justice. Am I off base here? Is that racist, or am I accurate?
I don't know that it's racist, but that's
Everything
what I
racist.
learned in school.
Left-wing insurrectionists will continue to ramp up their riots pre-election, resorting to increasingly violent and escalated attacks on law enforcement, federal buildings, and by conservative groups such as the Proud Boys. They will be targeted. These attacks will almost exclusively take place in blue cities. I know that sounds real surprising to you, in blue counties and in blue states. And that's because Democrats allow and even encourage these riots, while Republicans tend to shut them down with police action. Recent attempts by left-wing rioters to stage large events in red states, such as Texas, have been quickly shut down, and both Antifa and BLM terrorist organizations have only legal protection for their acts in areas where left-wing DAs will refuse to charge them with crimes, notably Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Compton, places in liberal strongholds, like places where Lori Lightfoot is in Chicago, where Mayor Jacob Fry is, where Melvin Carter is in St. Paul, where in Nancy Pelosi's state. It's no surprise to us that this is what's going to take place, and this is scary because what he notes here is a new surge of riots and violence that will now take place due to the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Hold on one second. Excuse my ignorance. But who are the Proud Boys?
They are a conservative group. You have other conservative groups like this QAnonymous. You have left-wing groups like Antifa and these other people. They're just another group that kind of represents the conservatives. Okay. And so the prediction is that groups like that on the conservative side of the aisle will be targeted. We talked with Jack Dunn, who is the director of national political affairs for a group called Bikers for Trump. They're a PAC, yep, and they're a conservative group. They make it known that they're Trump supporters. They are growing big enough to where they could probably potentially also be targeted. He continued by saying that the pro-abortion rioters and left-wing anarchists will specifically target the homes of GOP senators, rioting outside of their homes, threatening violence against them if they don't agree to delay any vote on the new Supreme Court justice until after January 20th. Now, this email came to me just days ago. I didn't have time really to dissect all of it and to go through it with you. I still haven't had time to really go through it with you. We're just going to kind of go through it here. By the way, in the second half of Patriotically Correct Radio today, we're going to have a very in-depth conversation about racism, systemic racism, and how it affects black people going to school, getting jobs, why they're trapped in the ghetto. And we've got some very good insight that we're going to be discussing in the second half. Right now, we're talking about the increasing violence and really voter suppression that's going to take place, according to a source that I have inside of the federal government. Mm-hmm. Now, when this came to me just a couple of days ago, that was before they started rioting and protesting outside of the home of Senator Lindsey Graham, who is obviously in favor of the president doing his duty to appoint a Supreme Court justice and then have it confirmed by the Senate. Chuck Schumer forgets what he said just years ago when there was another vacancy and there was a rush to appoint a Supreme Court justice prior to the election when Obama was going to be gone. And he said, no, you have to do your job. You have to get off your ass. You have to do this right now. But now it's different because Trump is in office. And so anybody who doesn't agree to delay a vote or a Senate Supreme Court until after January 20th, which I believe is Inauguration Day, and when the president actually sits down and takes office once again, anybody who doesn't agree to delay that will be subject to this violence. The riots have already begun against McConnell as well, but that will expand to many other senators. Importantly, President Trump will not take aggressive law enforcement action against terrorist uprisings before the election. Rules of engagement with rioters will continue to be relatively passive, allowing rioters to escalate their tactics without much of a response from federal law enforcement. We've seen that, and I guess we could speculate as to why that might be.
Well, I think that this whole idea of voter suppression is quite frustrating. You know, I mean, what are these groups going to go and protest at the polls and not allow folks in?
I'm sure of it. But it's not.
So if a guy,
hold on,
if a guy shows up to the polls in a Trump 2020 shirt and is attacked for being a Trump supporter and telling these guys to kiss his ass, he's going to go in and vote for whoever he wants and gets his ass whooped. What is going to be done about that?
Well, I don't know anything is going to be done about it because it's been said here that law enforcement is going to continue a passive approach to these people because of the pressure put forth by the mainstream media. And this is any attempt to stop this will be viewed as racist. You're going to be a racist if you attempt to stop this. If you go vote for Trump, you're a racist. If you wear that hat or that shirt, you're a racist. And I'm assuming that all of this will change after the election, but until then, America is going to have to endure 40 plus days of chaos, arson, violence, illegal rebellion activity that'll target Trump supporters. It'll target law enforcement. It'll target Christians. It'll target conservatives. During this time period, it's my prediction, and it's backed up and substantiated by somebody that works there, but during this time, the U.S. Senate will likely hold hearings for a new SCOTUS nominee, but will not hold a vote before the election. And the reason for this comes down to vulnerable Senate seats, where GOP members in tight races might be unable to hold their seats if they're forced to vote on a new SCOTUS nominee before the election. That makes sense. This is political pressure, which is going to be the same political pressure that is put on anybody that's there to vote. So although the fascist group Antifa, who claims to be anti-fascist, by the way, and they are the definition of fascism because they are the suppressors, if those are going to be the people that are out here rioting and burning and stopping you from going in and voting for Trump if that's who you choose to vote for, they're claiming that is because they've been suppressed. They're claiming because they're victims of fascism, when in fact they are the portrayers and the perpetrators of the suppression and of the fascism. So by very definition, who is the racist? Who is the anarchist? Well, we've defined that as BLM people and as anarchist Antifa people.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand how anybody in their right mind can look at all these things and scream racist, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, we'll have a very in-depth conversation in the second half about racism. But there's
super frustrating.
It is. There is a strong possibility also, Richard, while all of this is going on, of a military conflict with China in the South China Sea area near Taiwan before the election. Pentagon forces are itching for war. There is no doubt about that. The Pentagon is run by progressive, radical, liberal Democrats. And we all know that Democrats are warmongers. They itch for it. And it's
a lot of people get rich.
It's suppressed by the media, what's really going on with China. Okay, you don't know that there is a nuclear-capable Chinese sub just off of our coast. Okay, and that's because they don't tell you these things. And to a certain extent, like you've said before, ignorance is bliss.
Absolutely.
Like the guy Cypher said in The Matrix when he was sitting down eating his steak and drinking the wine. I know this doesn't really exist. I know that this isn't real steak, but I enjoy it, and ignorance is bliss. I kind of tend to agree with that because we do know what would happen if you were given 30 seconds to live. What would you do? Or 30 minutes. Let's put it that. Let's just say 3 hours. You were given 3 hours to live. You're going to live for 3 more hours. You have all your health, you have all your limbs, you have all your regular abilities. What are you going to do for those 3 hours? The normal person would go absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, you try to spend your last moments with the people who are most important to you, and let nothing stop you from getting to them. And so, yeah, there'd be mass hysteria all around. And I think that there is a large burden that comes with the knowledge of these things. And I think military members, for example, who have top secret clearances, or CIA or DEA folks or whoever, any of those agencies, there's a large burden that comes with knowing a lot of things that most other people don't. And I think it's super stressful for folks. And it's not I have a secret security clearance, and I probably know things that I can't talk about for, however long or forever. And sometimes, it's like saying, you can't drink that scotch, but it's sitting right there in front of you. And shit, I'm drinking it,
Yeah.
But,
right now.
No, right now I'm drinking water because I'm out of my
Okay, good.
American Pride Roasters coffee.
The Pentagon forces being that they're itching for war, and Democrats, we all know that that's what they do. They want to stage a conflict to open the coffers so that more money flows into weapons contractors who give then kickbacks to top Pentagon officials.
Yeah.
So it's still all political. It's still all about money. Follow the money, you'll find the corruption. The war does not need to happen, but they're going to stage this conflict. Mark my words, before Election Day, there will be a military conflict with China, which is scary.
And as I said, like you said, people in the Pentagon are itching for war, and I believe that it's largely part because people get very rich on the U.S. being at war. I think if you look at some of the top contractors and you go through the rabbit hole of who really is in charge and who really owns that, you're going to find that usually somebody very high up in that organization is a political figure.
Absolutely, they are,
and they're profiting,
and they're put there by the president and by the president's advisors, who then in turn tell the president who they believe the best fit would be in their administration for top military officials. So as they did come up through the ranks, most of them, and became generals and lieutenant colonels and full birds and things like that, majors. These people are then put there politically by politicians and by those who advise the president. Speaking of the president, we were able to get a firsthand look at President Trump when he was made aware of the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who obviously politically he didn't agree with. We'll take you to that here.
Yeah.
She just died? Wow. I didn't know that. I just, you're telling me now for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life. I'm actually sad to hear that. I am sad to hear that. Thank you very much.
And as you watch the president here, this is the guy that the media does not want you to see. This is going to be misinformation. This is going to be, if anybody speaks positively on his behalf, and I'm going to leave the president on the screen here so that you can watch. I mean, this guy is the exact opposite of every single thing that the media tells you that he is. He's a misogynist. He's a bigot. He's a sexist. He's a racist. He had sex with a porn star. And these are the things that continuously get shoved down your throat at nauseum, and I've said it over and over again, that they infiltrate your living room. It's almost like involuntary intoxication. It's like you've been roofied by Facebook, by Twitter, by Instagram, by ABC, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, CBS. The list goes on and on and on about all of the outlets that are so fervently in the tank for these liberal progressive Democrats who have this narrative. And the reason why they have this misinformation campaign, it's no different than the propaganda that was dropped over Nazi Germany, many years ago. The difference now is that rather than being paper flyers and you're rolling the dice to see whether or not it hits somebody and affects them from the airplanes above, is now you know that it affects them. You're able to infiltrate their social media accounts just based on their interests, show them ads that are specific to them, and make this guy look like a huge jerk, a jackass, every single day. And he knows that he controls the media to a certain extent, but they're only going to air what they see fits their narrative. He can control the media only by going to Twitter, and now Twitter is actually taking away his ability to do that also, which was his only channel up until now to get directly into the ears and before the eyes of the Americans, before American people who, by the way, elected him duly as their president, despite what everything was said and projected by the mainstream media. This guy right here, standing outside of Air Force One after a message of positivity, a message of unity, a message of promise for America, who is just now learning of the death of somebody who he didn't even get along with, somebody he didn't even care about. And this is not a prepared speech. This isn't something that he says he's going to, when she dies, this is what I'm going to say. He took a minute, he collected his thoughts, he put his hands out in front of him, he took a deep breath, and he articulated why it saddened him. And he said that she had a stellar career and an impactful life, and that regardless of whether or not you agreed with her or not, she led an excellent life. And this is not going to be what the mainstream media shows you. You might catch a clip of this on Fox News, or you might see it here on Patriotically Correct Radio. But this goes along with the voting stuff. Even when he's going to be winning, slaughtering in the general election, the media is going to tell you that that's not true. And that is just early misinformation. That's all it is, that this is information that's being released early, and it's misinformation. Because the course of the media has to give the Democrats enough time to counterfeit the fake ballots. That's why. The ballots they need in the districts they need to try to steal this election. And as the elections get underway, the left-wing media will fake exit polls to try to establish that Biden is winning. And then this way, when Democrats' counterfeit ballots come in, the stolen election results will match all the exit polls, and the media will claim that it all checks out.
There will be recount after recount after recount. I'll be impressed if, we get through January and we know who the president really is. I mean, if all this is true, these people are going to go to great lengths, to great trouble to ensure that they delay, if they can't stop, his reelection.
By the end of the day, Trump will be winning in an electoral victory. But many swing states, such as Michigan, Pennsylvania, will deliberately delay reporting of their results, claiming mail-in ballots will take weeks to count. So they'll refuse to officially report any victory for Trump. It'll be unofficial, it'll be contested, which is another reason why it is so important to fill the vacated seat in the Supreme Court, because it's not unlikely that the Supreme Court will have to get involved in a legal ruling on this particular election. Another reason why liberal, radical progressives want to delay this appointment.
So let me ask you a question, Stu. So let's just say that there is a recount. There's no president named. And we get to Inauguration Day, and there's still no president named. Who sits in the seat?
I guess I don't know the answer to that. At that point, does Donald Trump just stay there by default until that they've determined he's actually lost?
I don't think so.
Does Vice President Pence step up or not because he's part of that administration? Does it become the Speaker of the House, President Nancy Pelosi, if she's reelected and she then makes herself the interim president? And then by default, who then would be the vice president if she's the president? You can't just assume that because of the fact that it won't be Trump or Pence, that it would automatically be Nancy Pelosi. That would be an assumption on my part, and I don't have that information. So if you're able to get that for me, I guess I'm just not well versed, because we've never been at this point before. There's never been an instance in which we've had to actually consider this as being a reality.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. I think it's the Speaker of the House.
What was so funny? I said something that made you laugh.
No, my dog has snuck in, and his little bean was right here in the bottom corner. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. Everybody understands that we have families, we have pets. And by the way, speaking of family, I want to thank Mom for the tie. Sherry, my mother, bought us each a tie, and I'm glad that we didn't both wear them on the same day. That would look a little goofy. Thank you very much for the tie. Very patriotic. There's flags all over it. For those of you that are listening on Mojo 50 Radio, on iHeartRadio, you can't see the tie. If you're watching us on social media, you see what a ruggedly good-looking tie this is. Throughout Election Day, the left-wing media will also robotically claim voter suppression. Here we go. Setting up the narrative that if Trump wins, he must have won by suppressing the vote of black people because he is a racist, of course. Again, this is completely blatantly disproven by the fact that the actual groups that are going to be suppressing this, the actual groups that are going to be there to keep you from voting, to intimidate you, are going to be groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And I will be willing to bet you a 6-pack of beer, an assortment of my favorite IPAs, which I'll sit down and drink with you if you're willing to take this bet. I will bet you that the majority of these Black Lives Matter, street dog, terroristic anarchists will be white. But they will be claiming that you are racist, even though you're black, and going to support the president. In the second half of today's Patriotically Correct radio show, we are going to get in-depth on racism and how systemic it really is. Patriotically Correct radio brought to you by Johnson's Jewelers, also brought to you by Adjust Today Chiropractic and USCCA. They're giving away a gun over there, by the way, to USCCA. Use the promo code MOJO50 for your chance also to win a $22,000 trip, I think it is. Amazing. My name is Stu. That is Richard Leonard. A happy afternoon to all of you. Try to keep your heads up. More PC radio straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
We will force votes.
We will not stop.
Any Republican senator is part of the cover-up.
What the f?
Impeachment.
This is madness.
The PC Radio Show with Stu and Rich. Back in a minute.
Hey, it's Stu Peters with the Patriotically Correct Radio Show, here to talk to you more about Johnson Jewelers. I talk about them a lot. I talk about them because they're paying us to, but also because we have personal experience, or at least I do, with Johnson Jewelers. And if you have not had personal experience with Johnson Jewelers, it's because maybe that you were unaware, but now you are aware. And whether you're located near or around Woodbury, Minnesota is irrelevant, because Johnson Jewelers can provide service to you no matter where you are, globally, internationally, as well as around the world at johnsonjewelers.com. Maybe you have that old pendant or crest or stone that you want turned into a custom piece of jewelry. Maybe you have some jewelry that needs to be restored, or maybe you want something completely new made for you. You have something in mind? Just a quick visit to the website, a couple of phone calls, an email exchanged here and there, and you have the personal custom piece of jewelry meant for you. Visit them online right now, johnsonjewelers.com, johnsonjewelers.com, that's johnsonjewelers.com.
Their mamas always told them they'd never amount to anything.
You know what? I am going to ground you for 3 months.
Yeah, they were right.
Why doesn't anybody ever listen?
Stuart and Richard, PC Radio is on.
Welcome in on iHeartRadio, Mojo50 Radio, and also on the OpsLens app. If you have not downloaded the OpsLens app, make sure that you get over there and do that. Also, more greatness over at thepcradioshow.com, thepcradioshow.com. This segment of Patriotically Correct Radio brought to you by Johnson's Jewelers and Adjust Today Chiropractic. Johnson Jewelers located at johnsonjewelers.com, adjusttodaychiropractic.com. Dr. Dustin Dukart is also open on Saturdays, so if you have the opportunity, no time else to get seen by a chiropractor, which we all know it's very important that you're properly aligned, you can text him, you can call him, you can go to the website adjusttodaychiropractic.com and get in there on a Saturday when it's convenient to you. We want to get into this discussion about racism, and there's a video that was circulating around, didn't get a whole lot of attention. Obviously, we know why it didn't get a whole lot of attention, but this just kind of opens up the conversation about systemic racism. And by the way, for those of you who can't see it, you'll probably be able to tell just by dialect and conversation, but both of these people are black. And they're one black person trying to convince another that there's systemic racism while the other is saying, no, there's not. And later we'll get into where a white guy is actually trying to convince a black guy that he is systemically oppressed and held down because of the color of his skin. Check this out.
For people like me who don't see it.
How do you not see white privilege?
Because it doesn't exist.
She drives me nuts.
So what is it exactly?
Yeah, I agree.
I believe white privilege is just the ability just to be free and white and not have the same type of social, economic, and social ills as black people have to deal with. I mean, there's no white racial profiling. White people don't get pulled over by the cops just because they're white. They have the ability to show emotion and love to their sons without being emasculated. There's all kind of examples of white privilege.
You
Absolutely. Why don't you black? How come you don't believe white privilege exists? What you?
I mean, okay, so here's a couple of things that I want to address there, and then I can see that you're itching to get into this. But first of all, she said that it's a shame that white dads can show affection for their sons without being emasculated. Well, the very problem that we have is that in most of these black homes, there is no father, and you cannot deny, I'm not taking anything away from mothers here, so don't get all like, I'm a huge sexist on me, okay? I'm not taking anything away from moms, but what I will say is that there is undoubtedly a huge difference in the relationship between a son with his mother as there is for a son with his father. And in the absence of a father figure in the home, we see an increase in criminal activity, poor choices, no self-accountability, no individual responsibility.
I don't think that that's a secret. I think that, if you look back to professional athletes or successful people, especially that come from single family homes, they always, for some reason, seem to mention some guy who was a father figure to them.
Right, a coach maybe, or a
a
pastor.
coach, a mentor, a teacher. I mean, and you also will see and hear folks who talk about, man, it was just me and my mama, and I couldn't have been here without my mom. And yes, I get that also. But I think majority of the successful people that grew up in single family homes or single parent households, you find some figure within their past that helped to guide them down the path that they went on to be successful.
And to address that, yes, there are single family homes where black mothers or mothers of color step up, and the end result is that grown ass man saying, I couldn't have done this without my mom. That is an instance in which a mom realizes what her responsibility is and what the outcome might be for her son if she doesn't step up to the plate. The majority of them don't care enough to do that, which is why you have all of this going on. You have it going on in all of the ghettos, if you will, across the country, be it the south side of Chicago, the north side of Minneapolis, Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia, all of the liberally run shitholes across the country where we have a lack of fathers in the home. And that is because there is no individual responsibility. And to her point about white people being able to freely drive around without getting pulled over just because of the fact that they're white, that's completely untrue as well. I don't believe that there are cops out there looking to just pull over black people because they're black. Let's just take North Minneapolis, for example, because you and I have an extensive history there, and we have a great familiarity with the geographical lay of the land. 99%, or roughly, almost all of citizens on the north side of Minneapolis, by great definition, are black people. And so if a cop makes a traffic stop on the north side, the probability of it being a black person is pretty high. If a cop takes somebody to jail on the north side, the probability of it being a black person is pretty high. And if you're a white person driving around on the north side of Minneapolis, the probability of you being stopped just because you're white is pretty high. You're out of place. It doesn't fit by nature. That would be what we would call suspicion.
Right. There's no, I don't buy the profiling thing either. I think that, so I believe that there's probably black folks that were in the wrong place at the wrong time, fit the description. Yes, that's a thing. But just to pull you over to find a reason to mess with you because you're a black fella, I don't buy that. First of all, I would like to say, what makes you think you're so special that somebody's just looking for you to spend their time just to mess with you?
Or what makes you think that just because you're black, you're immune to the enforcement of the law? Or the following up on criminal suspicion. If you're witnessing a car loaded with 6 people, it doesn't matter if they're black or white. If the car has expired registration, or if the car has no proof of insurance, or a driver that the officer has familiarity with, that is the cop knows this guy doesn't have a driver's license, you're going to get stopped. Here's where this ignorant woman and this educated black man continue their conversation.
They did prior to the civil rights movement. Black people are blaming it on their lack of self-control and self-containment. They're blaming it on white people, while white people are working hard to keep it going.
I do believe that there is a need for black people to be held more accountable.
Yeah.
She got that right.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse racism, that doesn't excuse institutionalized racism, that doesn't excuse...
But there's no such thing as that. It's an illusion made up by black people and their leaders.
No, it's not.
She drives me nuts when she gets into that deal. No, it's not.
Local fry,
no, it's not. No, it's not. He's debunking all of her theories, and the only thing that she has to go on is the narrative that is falsely perpetuated by the media, and she will never address individual accountability. She started to say that she thinks that black people need to be held more accountable, and that's true. If anybody's held accountable for mistakes in their life, if anybody's held accountable for decisions that they make, the chances of them repeating poor decision making or poor or ill activity or criminal activity is much greater less. They're not going to do that again if they get caught doing it, or they're going to alter their behavior, like I've said on this program before, to make themselves more elusive and to help cover up for it. But the fact is, whatever the choices that they make, whether it's to stop doing that dope dealing, or stop trafficking guns, or stop being a gangbanger, worthless piece of crap, or to get more secretive about it, one of the two is going to happen. There's going to be a decision that's made. They continue here.
The economics with black people.
But that has nothing to do with racism.
It does. Racism is about power. It's about who's in control. And black people can't be racist because we're not in control. We're not in control of the educational system, some of the social organizations and things that run this country. We're not in control. Racism is about power.
But you would be in control of your own life if you had good parents, if they taught you how to be independent, if they taught you how to build, how to take care of. I've noticed that the reason I left where I lived over there in the Crenshaw district is that once the white people left, because once I moved there, when I first moved there, it was mostly whites. But once they left, as they did in Gary, Indiana, and other places, the blacks turned it into a ghetto. A beautiful area went to hell in a handbasket, so I got out. But if blacks had more character and they were taking care of themselves and being responsible and buying land and teaching their children,
that has to be taught.
Then right, so that has nothing to do with racism.
But that has to, of course, that has to be taught.
So
okay, so she's saying, well, that has to be taught. So is it the fault of the white person? Is it my fault, Richard, that she wasn't taught that by her mom and dad if she knew her dad? Is it my fault as a white person, or is it my dad's fault or my grandfather's fault? By that means that she wasn't taught this stuff, or that she has chosen not to pass this on to her kids if she has any. I don't even know who this lady is. But why does this become my fault, and why is it a racist society? Because she's claiming that this has to be taught. Well, if this has to be taught, and you weren't taught this, but you can recognize that this needs to be taught, then go teach some people.
Well, and if I remember right, I've seen this interview in length before. I think part of her resume says that she has a master's degree in something or another, or even if she has a bachelor's or an associate's degree. So if you're a black person and you have no opportunity because you're black, what are you doing with a college education?
Right. Well,
was it because you put in the work and
No.
you qualified to get in and all that other stuff?
In her case, no. She admits later in that interview that she's a product of affirmative action. So basically what that means is that the standard was lower for her to be able to get that degree and get into college, whatever level of college it was that she, and I don't know if she was Ivy League or whatever she was. But the fact of the matter is the standards were more in her favor than they are for me as a white person, or for my kids that they will have because they are white. She's afforded opportunities that I don't have, specifically because she's a black lady.
Yes. And she also talked about black people not being in power. Wasn't President Obama a black guy, or do they not recognize him as a black dude?
Or as a
and
president.
He was the most powerful man in the world for 8 years.
Yeah, not only once did we elect him, but we elected him twice. And
Yes.
by the way, the guy running for president now, who's had 47 years in politics, 47 years, and served as the vice president under the first duly elected black guy, again, not once, but twice, didn't take those 8 years to polarize race as a huge systemic issue in America. He didn't take that time then, so why now? Oh, wait a minute. I guess I understand why now. Because we have President Trump in office, who, by the way, is a huge racist. If you don't believe me, go turn on the Al Barak channel or the Communist News Network, and they'll tell you ad nauseum that he's a racist. There's no individual accountability here. There's no sense of self-responsibility, and there's no respect for thyself or thy neighborhood, which is what he was talking about when he said that, when he moved into the Crenshaw neighborhood, it was a very nice neighborhood full of white people. The blacks started coming in, and they turned it into a ghetto, into a horrible, violent place to live. And, God, I see you just really struggling with that dog over there. It's very distracting.
Yeah, I know.
Our listeners have to be, or our viewers just have to be wondering, what in the hell why can't he just get rid of that damn dog?
I'm getting my ass kicked.
Yeah, I can see that. You're definitely down in the fight. But Richard, you're half Nigerian, half Jew, or thereabout. And so, you grew up with a black father who was there, which is probably a big part of the reason why you are the person that you are today, because you were taught accountability, you were taught responsibility, and you were taught that there are repercussions for your actions. These are things that don't happen in fatherless homes, and even a repercussion such as getting your ass whipped. And if not by your dad, by the elder in the neighborhood, in predominantly black neighborhoods. It's just a cultural thing that takes place. It's a huge part of what's missing in America today.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. It has to be there. In my mind, there's not a whole lot of other explanation than the parenting. And when you're a young man and you're growing up with one parent and she's working 2 or 3 jobs trying to put food on the table and to make sure that you can play sports and that you're involved in stuff and to keep you off of the street corner. There's not a whole lot of other things for kids to do besides get in trouble. And I think also that the people that foster this trouble in any neighborhood, black or white, prey on single mother children, because what else are they going to do? They're not going to just sit inside and watch Thundercats for too long. They're going to want to get out and do shit. They're going to be bored.
Yeah, and I think that in fatherless homes, you see a lot more gang activity because, when they grow up, they're looking for that replacement for that person who was never able to really teach them. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity at athletics because of their academics. I mean, you could be running a 4-second flat 40 and be the fastest kid in the face of the planet, but you're not going to have an opportunity to show that on a football field if you don't have grades. And the reason you don't have the grades is because you don't have somebody at home telling you the importance of that and how it actually sets you up for a future. Now, I think that the notion that learning how to be a good person is done in a classroom, I think that's complete BS. I think that's a ton of crap, and I don't think that that's where you learn how to be a decent person. You learn how to be a decent person by the conversations that happen around your dinner table on a repetitive basis every single night, day in and day out, where learning opportunities take place, like the guy on the Shut Up challenge that you showed me yesterday. And I don't have time to get into that whole thing. If you don't know what it is, there's a TikTok video of the Shut Up challenge out there. But the guy at the end, although there were more funny ones, the guy at the end was the one that I was most impressed with, because here's a black guy in the home. He's standing what looks to be a very nice home. So he's obviously worked for something and done something and made something of himself. But what really proves it isn't the physical appearance of the living room or the kitchen that he's standing in while he's doing the dishes. What really proves it is the way that he reacts when his son or daughter is set up to disrespect the mom by telling her to shut up. And in a lot of those cases on that TikTok video, you saw fathers like former Marines or fathers like former Marines or fathers that they don't play that shit, getting up off the couch, running over here, looking for a whooping here and there. But this guy... This guy didn't do that. He took that opportunity as a teaching moment, and then at the end of that teaching moment, what did he do? I love y'all. And he gave those 2 kids a hug. And the teaching moment only lasted for about 30 seconds, which is probably the attention span that you have with a group of kids or a couple of kids or a single kid that's that age. I mean, I know that I have an 8-year-old boy, a 5-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old girl, and the attention span does not go much past 10 or 12 seconds. If you really want to have a talk with them, and I mean, it sounds funny, but I'm serious. If you really want to have a meaningful discussion with a kid, I dare you to try. That could be a challenge in and of itself, and I'd like to see some of the TikTok videos had that app not been banned, but I'd like to see some social media videos of people actually really trying to have meaningful conversations, and they might sit there and pretend that they're listening. But then if you ask them to regurgitate or repeat anything that you said, the likelihood of them being able to do that is slim to none. So you have to capitalize on these little teaching moments. And in a fatherless home, those teaching moments, by the way, present themselves all day long. And I think that even goes into your 20s. As a male, I know that because statistically, males develop slower than females, and I don't think I really had my shit together until just last week or the week before that. So we're continuously learning. Okay. And the only way that we can learn is if we're taught. And so to her point, this has to be taught. You're absolutely right, you dumb lady. Yep. It does have to be taught. And so the problem becomes that when you have a home that if a father isn't there because he was killed in the line of duty as a police officer or serving our country in Afghanistan or Iraq, that's one thing. But if a father isn't present by choice, you can't blame anybody but the people who raised the kids that are now turning into adults that are part of this mass chaos, part of the burning, part of the looting, part of the excuse making, part of the problem.
Yeah, it proves to be true time and time and time again. There's just there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, man. It's certainly a problem. It's certainly the cause of the issue, and the biggest question is, how do we fix it? How do you force a father to stay in the life of his son or daughter?
Well, that has to start right now. And that has to start with new fathers, okay? So when you figure out that your girl is pregnant, you got to make a choice. And that choice had better be, I want something better for this child than I had for myself. That's where the individual responsibility comes in. Okay, so maybe even if you do believe you were destined to be a street thug, when another life is now dependent on your teachings, if you really believe that you had no choice, then make it a choice for your kid. Make it a choice, be involved, make a cognizant, conscious decision to make that child's life the most important thing in your life. And until that happens, we're not going to see that. White people are dressed up in all black, calling themselves Antifa. More white people are involved in the BLM terrorist group than black people are. White anarchists that are preaching about racism. We have an interview here with Larry Elder, where this white guy is trying to convince Larry Elder, who's a black guy, that racism exists, and Larry Elder is countering that. We'll bring that to you
whether
here.
It's Tamir Rice in Cleveland, who was twirling around the gun, whether it's Michael Brown in Ferguson, who had just committed a strong arm robbery. Almost every one of these incidents involves somebody resisting arrest. Why don't you just do what the police tell you? My dad said, when I get pulled over, have my hand at 10 o'clock, have my hand at 2 o'clock, say yes, sir, say no, sir, make sure my paperwork is in order, and if I feel the cop is mistreating me, get a badge number and deal with it later on. If Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and Obama and the whole group of them told black people to do that, we'd have a lot fewer of these things to deal with in the first place.
Yeah. All right, so I'm with you. I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying here. So as a black conservative, who now you've laid out your case there.
But you haven't laid out yours. I asked you to name the most important example of racism, and you gave white cops going after black people. And I told you, gave you the facts for that, so that's nonsense. So you must have something else. What else is it? If you think racism remains a problem in America, give it to me.
Well, I think it remains a problem.
Give it to me.
It may not be systemic in that it's not like you're not being hired because you're black. There's no systemic reason, legal reason that
blew a hole in
exists,
that one.
that kind of thing. But I think that racism as a general theory
I need
exists.
I need some specifics. You gave me the white cop thing. What else? Give me another example where you think is a problem.
Well, as a black conservative, tell me how do you get people to come around?
You're the one who made the assertion that you think racism remains a major problem in America. I asked you to give me an example. You gave me white cops going after blacks. As far as I'm concerned, you didn't hold it up very well. What's the other argument you have? What's the other thing?
Well, I don't know that it's systemic in the sort of macro sense.
I'm not mad. I just want to know what it is you're talking about.
That's exactly what. Believe me, that's 100% why I wanted to have you.
Blacks are not getting into school. BS. We have affirmative action. So a black person with an SAT and a GPA of X will get into a school faster and easier than a white person with an SAT or a GPA of X. And if going to school is a route to the middle class, you can make an argument that blacks have an easier route to the middle class. If you're talking about about poverty, the poorer you are, the more accessible loans and grants are for you. The problem, the biggest burden that black people have, in my opinion, again, is the percentage of blacks, 75% of them, that are raised without fathers. And that has every other social negative consequence connected to it. Crime, not being able to compete economically in the country, being more likely to be arrested, that's the number one problem facing the black community. And when I hear people tell me about systemic racism or unconscious racism, I always say, give me an example, and almost nobody can do it.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. If I say it, I'm a racist. So thank you to Larry Elder for getting that out there. But these are the kinds of things. This was done on something called the Rubin Report. I'm not even familiar with what that guy is, Rubin. But he's obviously a white guy. And he's there arguing with a black guy about whether or not racism exists.
Well, and so this is how every conversation goes with somebody who is claiming that systemic racism is a thing. I've gotten into arguments with my friends even about it. Mm-hmm. And you say something like, okay, well, where's your evidence? Give me a reason why this exists, or how is it prevalent to you? Even if I had an argument with a black friend of mine who ended up calling me a Klansman at the end of it. I said, well, I didn't know the KKK came from Nigeria, but if that's what you're going to think, okay. But he had no way to show or explain that this is really a problem. And this is a black man who excelled in the military, was damn near a major, 20 years of service, multiple deployments, all this other stuff. How are you oppressed? You're a hard worker.
You know what I think it is? I think it's compensation. What does a guy with a small dick do? He
buys a big truck.
buys a big truck with loud exhaust, or a fast motorcycle, or a Ferrari if he can afford it. It's compensation. If you have some sort of a self-identification issue, or if you have been able to identify on the other end of the spectrum a shortcoming in some way, and maybe it's not your genitalia size, but maybe it's your lack of knowledge about a certain subject, you'll just get really loud on that subject. Because
just to be on the bandwagon,
or get very confrontational, because the notion is that he with the loudest voice wins. But you listen to Larry Elder, he doesn't have, he's a frequent national media commentator. I don't think he has his own show. If he does, it's on the Fox Business Network, and I don't watch that because numbers bore me to tears, and that's a shortcoming of my own. I'm not much of a numbers guy. I didn't like math. I didn't excel at math. I don't like looking at it. It's just not fun for me. The same with logistics and shipping and all that. It just bores me to tears. What a terrible job that must be to have, is to be a mathematician. But somebody has to do it. There's probably a lot of people that say I would never be able to sit there and talk on a radio show for an hour every afternoon about nothing and try to make sense out of all the garbage that you guys are talking is nearly a job in and of itself. And I'm sure that there are people that feel that way. There are also people that would never want to be a cop. And to those people, I say, good for you. I don't blame you at all today, in today's day and age, for not wanting to be a police officer. There are probably people that don't want to be bounty hunters because it's too fearful, or they don't have the knack for it. There's a certain fit for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, when somebody can't find that fit, they can't find that self-purpose, they can't, then it automatically has to become somebody else's fault.
Yes.
And that's what this is. The friend of yours who has a successful military career, who's a black guy, has somebody in his family that is claiming that something happened to him or her as a result of the white man. And damn it if the media won't get on board with broadcasting some of these black folks that have gotten up off of their ass and made themselves extremely successful. And damn LeBron James, whatever his name is, he's playing a kid's game, a fun game, and getting paid millions, unconscionable amounts of money. The guy would never have to work again. You, me, and him, and all of our families would never have to work again if we could just live off of the interest alone that is accruing in the accounts of LeBron James. But yet, he lives in a systemically racist country that oppresses him for being black. Name one other country on the face of this planet where you can get paid that kind of money for playing a game. How about Lil Wayne, for example? Has anybody told this story?
12 years old. I shot myself. I was in the house. Police knocked on the door. I was right there. They knocked the door down. Everybody jumped over my body to go get the guns and drugs and whatever they could find. It took one guy to stop right there and cuss everybody that hopped over me out. Like, what the f*** are y'all doing? They said, oh, no, we was going to see if it... What the f*** are y'all doing? We called the ambulance. A f***ing ambulance? Do you not see this kid on the floor with this hole in his chest? Say, you drive, pick me up, brought me to the hospital. He didn't drop me off at the ambulance and say, you take him. He brought me to the hospital room and and stood there and waited till the doctor said he's gonna make it. He said, don't worry, my name's Uncle Bob. He was white as snow. Them motherfuckers that hopped over me was blacker than me.
Was he a cop?
Yeah, he was a cop, and my life was saved by a white man. I don't know what racism is. I know a good motherfucker named Uncle Bob, though.
Nobody's going to tell that story. And thank you, Lil Wayne, for speaking up. Because when you say it, people listen. When I say it, I'm discounted as a bigot and a racist. And when the interviewer said, well, was he a cop? He looked at him all sideways. Yeah, he was a cop. Right. But he was a white man. I don't know.
He didn't even identify that he was a cop. He was a white dude.
And he said, I don't know what racism is. I do know a good mother effer named Uncle Bob, though. And let me tell you this. For every story like that is told, there are millions of Uncle Bobs out there.
Yep.
And they don't get the attention. Richard, your final words for today.
Wake up, folks. Wake up. Do the right thing. And go vote.
Yeah, definitely. Even though they try to suppress you, even though they're saying there's going to be violence everywhere, make sure that you get out there and vote. Thank you again, Lil Wayne, and thank you to all of our heroes that actively serve in the United States military. Thank you to police officers, first responders, firefighters. I want you to know that we really appreciate you. Until tomorrow at 4 o'clock, here's what's up to it. Here's what's down to it. Here's to any way you can get to it. Here's to those that don't do it. May they be dragged to it, tied to it, or forced to it. And here's to us who do it, because we're the ones that's used to it. Remember to fly low and avoid the radar. One day they're going to come for the car, and when they do, save the radio!
To know them, grow to love them, love to hate them. Stewie and Richie, PC Radio.